Sovereign of Fortune by Mason Paul. Copyright 2024, all rights reserved. Strangely enough, he felt a heavy burden lift from his shoulders. His college career had been a bad joke from the beginning. If he were honest with himself, he would admit he never really wanted to be there in the first place. What he really wanted to do was play his guitar in a band. "You can do whatever you want, honey," his mother would say, "once you finish college. And get a good job," she continued. "Pay off your student loans, purchase your first home, settle down with a nice girl, make me some grandkids, put them through private school, save up for retirement, sell the house, move to Florida, and send your grandkids to college. Then you can do whatever you want," she smiled, "even play your guitar." Well, I tried, he told himself. He could always get his old job back at What You Want Mart. He'd finish up his general ed courses at Austin Community College and then transfer to state. It would set him back a few years. Sure, maybe he wouldn't get as good of a job as he would have with a degree from UT, but at least he'd finish school before he was 30. What about Kirby? Kirby would never even look at him if he was a college dropout working at What You Want Mart. It would be just like what happened with Jessica the first time he was kicked out. At least Jessica was your actual girlfriend. A painful flood of memories and emotions hit him like a brick. His entire body deflated like a balloon. Morgan was just about to walk out the door when she turned and saw Zach looking pathetic, standing in the same spot they left him. She returned to his side at the lab bench. "What are you doing?" Alexis shouted to her from the doorway. "Let's get out of here." "You can go ahead," Morgan said. "I'll catch up in a bit." "No way," Alexis fumed as she stomped over. "You're not about to stay and try to help this moron." With a sigh, Morgan gently took the lab worksheet from Zach's hands and began erasing his entries. She then replaced them with her own. Unbeknownst to the group, Professor Ravenna had exceptionally keen hearing. "Are you making numbers up?" Zach asked. Morgan shot him a cool look. Alexis plopped down next to her. "You remembered everything, didn't you?" Morgan nodded. "That's incredible," Zach said as Morgan's slender fingers worked the report. "Do you have a photographic memory or something?" She nodded. "Really?" Zach asked. Morgan didn't answer. She just kept working. Zach considered the highly intelligent yet soft-spoken brunette. That's hot, he thought. Morgan is pretty cute, but she's not as sexy as Kirby. He shuddered at the thought of seeing her with Hunter. Why should I care? It's not like she's my girl, or the only girl on campus. Why am I so hung up on her? He took another look at Morgan as she scribbled away at the lab report. I wonder if she's still with that guy? Zach used to see her all the time hanging out in the library with some scruffy old dude. Alexis was always nearby, either pouting or scowling. At first, Zach thought maybe she was teaching some homeless bum how to read or something. Later, he learned that's just what graduate physics students look like, and that he was her boyfriend. "Done," Morgan said. "Woohoo!" Alexis shouted, picking up the report. She flipped through it. "Looks good," she announced, slapping Morgan a high five. "Now let's blow. I'm starving." "Great work, Morgan," Zach said. Alexis rounded on him. "No thanks to you. Moron, next time your partner doesn't show, don't even look our way. I don't care what the professor says." "Don't be mad," Morgan protested. "All's well that ends well." "No," Alexis snapped. "This guy's a loser." She squinted her eyes and looked at him hard. "I think he's bad luck," she said. "Stay the hell away from us," she warned, pointing her finger in Zach's face. I said, "I'm sorry," Zach whined. "Yeah, whatever," Alexis said, snatching up her stuff and heading towards the door. "Hurry up, Morgan, I'll be outside." The redhead stopped in her tracks and whipped around. "And change your pants, man, it looks like you shit yourself." With that, she bounced out the door, letting it slam hard behind her. "Hey, Morgan, I really am sorry," Zach said. "It's no big deal," she replied, gathering her things off the lab table. "We all make mistakes." "Today hasn't been my day," Zach said. "I hope things get better," she said, her hazel eyes locked onto his, the corners of her mouth curling into a cute but bashful smile. Zach felt a knot in his throat. He watched her every move as she delivered the report to Professor Ravenna. Morgan had a delicate and easy way about her. While she was a slim girl with narrow hips compared to an hourglass figure like Kirby's, she worked them back and forth as she walked just like a pendulum. Zach was hypnotized, and she knew he was watching her. She looked at him over her shoulder and smiled. His lungs emptied with one long sigh. Suddenly, there was a loud pop. Zack turned his head to see a flame burst to life across the room. A wave of heat and pressure smacked him in the face. "What the fuck?" yelled Professor Ravenna. She dashed to the utility cabinet and grabbed the bright red fire extinguisher. "She moves really well in those heels," Zack marveled as the flames reached for the ceiling. "Damn it, Charlie!" Professor Ravenna bellowed as she clacked across the room to where the pasty girl stood helplessly, staring slack-jawed at the flames. "Move!" Ravenna belted, shoving Charlie out of the way and blasting the fire with the extinguisher. As perversely entertaining as the whole scene was, it was definitely Zack's cue to leave. He took one final glance over his shoulder as he hurried through the door. Zack would go on to see many strange things in his lifetime, but he would never forget the look on Professor Ravenna's sneering, goggled face as she squatted in her 6-inch stilettos. The big red fire extinguisher dangled between her legs as she worked her hips back and forth like a lawn sprinkler, spraying the fire. Dry white powder swirled everywhere. Something about Professor Ravenna always made her seem out of place. But now, she looked like she belonged. She almost looked happy. "Arg!" she roared, letting the fire have it. Somewhere in that blizzard of chemical fire retardant, Zack could hear Charlie sobbing. He wanted to feel sorry for her, but he didn't have the time. Zack always had a problem with obsessing over things that bothered him, especially when it involved girls. Maybe fencing will clear my mind. He arrived at the gym a little early. The wrestling club was still wrapping up practice. Zack leaned against the wall, playing his favorite NLPRPG.ai game, Sovereign of Fortune, on his phone. Absorbed in exploring a fantasy world of sword and sorcery battling warlocks, demons, and dragons, while amassing gold coins, Zack hardly noticed the dark shadow that fell over him. "Well, if it isn't Zack off the whack off," a voice taunted. By the time Zack had reached middle school, that joke had grown old. Instinctively, he fired back his patented response. "Straight into your mom's mouth!" Unfortunately for Zack, he never bothered to look up from his game to see who he was talking to. Suddenly, his hands felt the sting of a slap as his phone flew to the floor, skittering beneath the bleachers. Before he could process what had happened, Zack found himself pinned against a wall at the end of long tree trunk arms, the massive skull of a gorilla meathead, roid raging on the other end. "What did you say about my mother?" snarled Hunter Connor Greenway, flanked by 2 other meatheads not quite as big, but just as dumb-looking. They were still wearing their wrestling singlets. Zack scanned the gym. Other than a few fencing students milling about, waiting for practice to begin, there was only him, Hunter, and his flunkies. No one dared intervene. "I said," barked the blonde gorilla, "what did you say about my mother?" "Yeah," chimed Donnie, flunky number 1. Hunter's fist tightened around Zack's shirt as his other hand menacingly mushed Zack's cheeks. "You think you're pretty funny, don't you?" Hunter growled in a low voice. Zack didn't like where this was going. Back in the day, situations like these tended to end with Zack kissing the floor, his arm jacked up in a hammerlock. The jeering laughter of classmates still rang in his ears. But those days were long gone. Weren't they? Hunter wouldn't resort to violence now, would he? Not with so many witnesses. Campus police would take physical assault seriously. He would be expelled. Or would he? Or maybe Hunter's rich daddy would just make another donation to the school, and his political connections would ensure any charges disappeared. Before you know it, Hunter would be right back on campus. And Hunter knew this too. Suddenly, Zack had a disturbing thought. Everyone knows Hunter gets all the girls. Well, maybe this is why? Because all the girls know Hunter can beat up all the boys, which makes him a man among boys, no matter how stupid, crude, cruel, or obnoxious he was. Maybe that's why Kirby ditched me for Hunter? From Mother Nature's perspective, it made perfect sense. Why would a beautiful woman like Kirby want to be with a boy when a man is available? "You know who else thinks you're funny? Hey, Zack!" Fat fingers snapped in front of Zack's face. "You spacing out on me, Zackoff?" "Huh?" Zack murmured. "Pay attention when I'm talking to you," Hunter groused. "Don't be rude." "Oh, sorry. Now, where was I?" Hunter reflected, his grip slacking just a little as he gathered his thoughts. "Oh yeah, you know who else thinks you're funny?" No," Zack stammered, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Oh, I think you know?" Hunter grinned, his eyes gleaming with delight. "She told me so herself, after I fucked her like a dog." Zach's stomach dropped to his knees. "That Zach, he's so whack," Hunter mocked in a sing-songy, falsetto voice. "He thinks if he grovels and kisses my ass, maybe one day I'll like him." "Why? That's not nice to say," I told her. Hunter taunted, playing the part of himself. "I've known Zach for a long time, and he's really a nice guy." Hunter gave Zach a wink. "Do you know what she said after that?" he queried, grinning like a Cheshire cat. Zach stared back, his jaw slack. Hunter's flunkies hung on every word. "What did she say?" blurted flunky number 2, Blake. Hunter paused before continuing, scanning the room, making sure he had everyone's attention. Then he began to sputter and cough violently. Ack, ack." Donnie and Blake's brows furrowed in confusion. "That's what she said," Hunter crowed, releasing Zach suddenly. "Because my dick was in her mouth." The gym echoed with a chorus of raucous laughter. Hunter turned back to Zach, a wicked smirk on his face. "Let's just say she blew you off the other night so she could blow me," he taunted, slapping his knee. Zach stood motionless, as his face flushed red. He hadn't felt this helpless and humiliated since high school. The encounter had officially become a scene, attracting the entire gym's attention, with more students gathering, like bystanders staring at a car crash. Every fiber in his body twitched with the itch to bash the big meathead in his square jaw. But Zach knew he was no match for the pharmaceutically enhanced captain of the wrestling club. In fact, nothing would make Hunter happier. Zach could feel tears welling up in his eyes. He felt like a cornered animal in what was supposed to be his safe space. Not only had this bigger and stronger rival slept with his girl, but he was taunting him about it in front of everyone, and there was nothing Zach could do about it. Or was there? Hunter had always been a classic schoolyard bully ever since grade school, and here they were in college, still playing the same roles they played as kids. Only this time, Zach realized that he didn't have to react like a kid. He didn't have to get angry or hurt or sad. That's what bullies thrive on. Zach decided to give Hunter something else instead. To be continued.